In 2018, my mom ran up to me with a look of pure pride on her face. She leaned in and whispered, "I finally did it. I have $50,000 locked in the safe." This was her emergency fund. At the time, I was happy for her for being so disciplined and safe, but looking back at that moment now, I realized she made a huge mistake. In this video, I'm going to reveal the three main ways people are completely messing up their emergency funds, the massive price you pay for getting these wrong, and the simple fix to make sure you're protected so you can finally stop worrying and sleep like a baby. But before we get into these, you might be wondering, are these fixes going to take a weekend of spreadsheets and stress? Nope, it's a shift you can make in about 15 minutes, or maybe 30 if you're slow like my mom. No judgment there. When my mom showed me that $50,000 in her safe, she wasn't just smiling because of the money, she was smiling because she felt safe. The irony is that if you build your fund the wrong way, like she did, the very thing you think is protecting you is actually quietly robbing you blind. Most people, like my mom, confused having the cash with having value. She felt safe because every time she opened that metal safe, that stack of $100 bills was exactly the same height. It hadn't moved. But while her pile of cash stayed the same, the world around her got more expensive. She was prioritizing the physical thickness of her envelope over her actual buying power. She didn't realize that a full safe in 2010 only buys a half-empty grocery cart today. By keeping it under a lock and key, she was protecting the paper but losing the wealth. Even though she still had her $50,000, she lost about $13,000 in real value to inflation over those 10 years. On top of that, she paid what I called an opportunity tax. By not having the money in a proper location, she missed out on an extra $10,000 in income that she could have earned with no extra risk. That's $23,000 gone, or 4 years of groceries or a decade's worth of gas, just because she didn't know any better. This is the first mistake most people make: putting money into a bank account or safe that earns little to no interest. Luckily, I discovered a solution for her. I finally convinced her to move a test $10,000 into a high-yield savings account, HYSA, from Ally Bank. At first, she was extremely skeptical, asking, "Is this a scam? What if the bank goes bankrupt? I've never heard of this bank before." But after a few months of persuasion and once I showed her it was FDIC insured, meaning the government would pay her back should anything happen, she took the leap. 30 days later, she saw her first $40 interest payment hit. She was hooked. She realized the metal safe wasn't a shield, it was a flaming money pit. I guess the old saying is true: money talks. More than I can anyways. The takeaway? Stop letting your money sit around like it's unemployed. Put it to work in things like HYSAs, CDs, or bonds. The money will not only stay just as safe, but also work for you. I once knew a professional options trader who was a pretty smart dude. This guy made millions of dollars in the market and he didn't want his money sitting still in a boring savings account. He was the complete opposite of my mom. To him, cash was trash. So he put every single cent he had into his brokerage account and ignored the concept of having a safety net. He thought he was being efficient. But then 2008 happened. I remember the trauma from his voice. The market was crashing, and because his emergency fund was tied up in the market, he ran out of options. Pun intended. Let me know if you got that pun in the comments. His investments were shrinking by 5% every single day. He didn't have cash to pay his mortgage or his bills. He was backed into a corner and had to sell his investments at the absolute bottom just to get cash to survive. He even made a desperate Hail Mary play, doubling down on Lehman Brothers just 3 hours before they went bankrupt. He lost 6 figures in a single afternoon because he was gambling without a safety net. This is the second mistake: not having an emergency fund or not having a big enough emergency fund. It doesn't matter if you're treating your emergency fund like an investment instead of insurance, or if you're not saving enough in your emergency fund. They're both mistakes. Some people are a bit better than him and save 1 or 2 months of expenses, but that's not enough. Don't be so eager to start investing. If the market drops at the same time you lose your job, you're forced to sell your precious investments at a 40% discount just to keep your lights on. If your safety net is tied to the market, it's not a net, it's a tightrope. The solution is simple: build a real safety net. Real security doesn't start until you have at least 6 months of expenses in an account that you can access at any time. At the very minimum, you need food, utilities, housing, and transportation, and maybe some coffee. Don't look at it as missing out on gains. Look at it as buying the cushion you need to stay invested with your other money when your world goes up in flames. A friend of mine once called me, sounding stressed because he had to dip into his emergency fund. I asked him what happened. Was it a medical bill? A job loss? A McDonald's related catastrophe? He said, no, there's a sweet flight deal to Japan. It's 50% off for the next 4 hours only. If I don't use the money from my emergency fund now, I'm losing out on the savings. He felt like he was being a smart shopper. He used the money, went on the trip, and had a great time. But a few weeks after he got back, his car's commission blew out. A $3,500 repair. And because his emergency fund was currently a series of photos on his Instagram feed, he had to put that 3.5K on the credit card at 24% interest. So now he's basically paying 24% interest on a picture of a bowl of ramen. That's probably the most expensive Instagram ramen post I've seen in a while. I hope those 12 likes he got were worth it. This is the third mistake. Using your emergency fund for wants that are disguised as needs. We often treat our emergency savings like a treat yourself account because we find a great deal that feels urgent, but a deal is not an emergency. So what's the takeaway? The next time you feel compelled to touch a single dollar, you must ask yourself, is it unexpected? Is it necessary? And is it urgent? If the answer isn't yes to all three, don't touch the fund. Look, I don't just talk about this because I'm a finance bro on Wall Street or something. I talk about it because I've lived it. Less than 6 months ago, I was actually laid off from my job. For most people, that's a heart-stopping, how am I gonna pay rent kind of day. But because I avoided the 3 mistakes that we talked about, I didn't pay the opportunity tax, I didn't gamble with my safety net, and I avoided impulse purchases, I have a $100,000 emergency fund sitting there ready to go. Don't get me wrong, when I got the news, I was still shocked. But I didn't panic. I didn't have to call my friends and family for help or put my life on a credit card. I just logged out, made lunch, and started planning my next move. That is the power of doing this right. And I want this for you too. You aren't just saving money, you're buying your own peace of mind. Here's the cold hard truth. Everything I just told you about building the perfect emergency fund is technically useless if all of your money just sits there for the next 30 years. An emergency fund is how you survive, but it is not how you get rich. To do that, you must invest in the right way. That is why you need to watch this next video immediately. I'm going to walk you through every single click, every single button to buy your first investment. The whole process takes less than 15 minutes, requires less than $10, and is the exact system I used to build a $500,000 portfolio by age 28. If you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe.